and welcome back to Rewind Reviews. We're here. We've done it. Went away for 20 weeks. And we're back to watch this piece of shit.
So bad, man.
We'll come to that in a second. For those who are new to the podcast.
I just did you have a moment where you're like, and we can, I'm aware there's a defense to this, which is you chose it. But, the game is to one up on bad films for the first time.
Yeah. You win.
But were you watching this going, fucking, who's even going to listen to I would hope an hour, because I don't know how much there is to say about this film.
Oh, I got plenty.
Talking about this. Oh, I'm glad you have, because I'm just like, oh, it's bad. And I was just like...
you can tell that, towards the end, I got defeated by how bad it is, because my notes are so heavy for the first act of the movie, and then they really thin out, because I'm just like, I can't keep up. If it would literally take me 5 hours to go through this movie and find all the shit that I hate about it. So,
yeah.
But for those new to the podcast who are jumping on because there's a new episode uploaded, this is a podcast where we basically take a look back at movies, usually from sort of our youth. So it's a lot of movies from like the 80s and 90s we've tackled so far, often family movies, but not always. Just movies we have a connection with from many years ago, sort of movies that are mildly nostalgic to us. The rules aren't very hard and fast, so we've there's been exceptions, but a lot of it's been stuff we watched in sort of like when we were either children or in uni or whatever, and it's a mix of stuff. We sometimes watch classics that we know we're going to love, and sometimes we wonder, does that movie that I remember fondly hold up, and we venture in. But we've accidentally created a trend that the first movie of every series is like the worst movie we can think to pick. And it happened by accident because Chris picked The Girl Next Door for Series 2. So for Series 3, I picked Joe's Apartment. Having enjoyed it as a child, but knowing full well, like, even though I hadn't seen it recently, there's no way that's good, right? And I was very, very apologetic to Chris for choosing that because it was awful, and I didn't have a pleasant time rewatching it, and I have some mild nostalgia for it. I can't imagine what a shitter it was for Chris to sit through it. But at least Joe's Apartment had choices made. Didn't agree with those.
This is of all the bad movies we've done.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be bold and say this is the worst
by far. This is the worst movie we've reviewed for this podcast, without question. So, for those who've not seen the title or aren't paying attention, you haven't seen the title, essentially. That's the same sentence, because that's the only way you would know. We're reviewing the Sandra Bullock movie from, I think, 2009, All About Steve. Which...
but that's what it's about, Dan. What's it called? Hey, dad joke. Carry on.
And yeah, I think it's safe to say that generally speaking, with these podcasts, there's always, even if there's a movie that we choose that's not great, there's always a hope maybe it does turn out to have something more to it. Like I think you, Chris, were kind of nervous about doing 10 Things I Hate About You and discovering that maybe it doesn't hold up, but then we both quite enjoyed it on the rewatch.
I was slightly worried it would be the opposite with this because, I'm sure we'll get to it, but because of the scenario in which I watched it, I turned this on last night and went, oh, what if it's all right? And what if we come on this podcast and Dan's like... Because I was quite cocky. I was like, whenever you reference bad movies, I was like, don't worry, I've got an ace up my sleeve. Like, I was always like, don't worry, I can pull out something. Because you were like, I think you even said at one point, I don't know how you're going to do worse. And I was like,
I think I said, and how do you do worse than Joe's Apartment, was I think what I said.
And I was like, I could do worse. So, but then I started watching it thinking, oh shit, what if actually it's all right? What if it's just actually a fine rom-com and I'm misremembering it? But I wasn't.
No. Yeah, it's dreadful. For some context, there's this thing in America called the Blacklist. And it's a service in which you can submit your scripts, and they get rated and reviewed by a very mysterious group of readers who are people from Hollywood. It's unclear who these readers are, but to me at least, I'm sure maybe the information's out. I don't know. But the Blacklist is this website. You pay to have your script submitted and rated and reviewed, and they give you like feedback on the script. And every year, the Blacklist, for a long time now, have compiled the top 10 or something, or top 50 unproduced scripts in Hollywood. And it used to have this reputation of being pretty infallible. Like, if you were a producer and you just wanted to make an original movie, like you weren't looking to do a sequel or a franchise or whatever, you try and pick up. I mean, there'd be bidding wars over these Blacklist scripts when they released their list of the best unproduced scripts every year. And somehow, God knows how, because the script is fucking culprit numero uno. This is suspect one. This is like this is the start of where this goes very wrong. And I say start because it's everything. But we'll get to that. But the script for All About Steve went through the Blacklist process. It turns out this is what I've discovered in the last couple of days. By the way, just give you guys a heads up now. We usually do trivia at the end of a movie review. There's some trivia, but it's like it'll take me 2 seconds. There's like 3 pieces of trivia, and one of them is this. So about the Blacklist. So basically, this got picked up as somehow as one of the best unproduced scripts of the year in like 2006 or something like that. And then by 2007 2008 was shot. Like someone bought it and shot it, because you just, at that point there was a lot of blind trust in these lists. I feel like the confidence in the Blacklist has waned in the subsequent years, and I can't pretend that there's a chance this isn't part of that. Because obviously this is a famously bad movie. It doesn't take a lot of Googling to find that out, and the fact that no one's even bothered to put trivia on the IMDb trivia page says a lot about people's feelings for this movie. They're not even interested in finding out interesting things about it. But it starts with that script, and I'm still now scratching my head. The only explanation I can think of, because I genuinely, if someone said to me I had my script featured on like the Blacklist, knowing some of the other, or over the years the reputation that is acquired from other produced things, I would assume the script was pretty good, or at least started that way. So one of two things has happened here. Either there was some sort of egregious error at the Blacklist, and this script was put on that list through some sort of error, and they then subsequently fired the reader that gave it a good review. But I think multiple people have to end up reviewing it to get on that list. But anyway, or the other option is there was a good script that got on the Blacklist, and this poor writer then went through the studio grinder, signed on a big movie star, or 2, or 3, and then made a shit ton of insane changes and took something that formerly worked and made it just an absolutely unreadable, unwatchable mess. I'm not sure the answer, but that's how this movie was caused. It's the only phrasing I can think of for that. This wasn't made. This wasn't created. This movie was caused. It was birthed from the fucking pits of hell. But I've got to know, Chris. So when you selected this, you said there was an association to your past of there was a story related to this movie, and all I've been thinking through watching it was it better be a fucking good story, because I had to sit through this fucking movie.
Well, again, you can't lay the gauntlet of how you're going to do worse than Joe's apartment and then
be annoyed it's a bad movie. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, like, that's what this, and it's almost like the Drunk Statics, where it's like part of me's like, can this be the end of this tradition now?
Well, it's funny. Maybe that might be the way, because how do you like intentionally get worse than this? I will say it's really funny actually, because Chris's tone in the texts yesterday when we were scheduling this podcast recording for today, we had to schedule it last minute because of my work stuff being very flexible this week. Like, I might have ended up working today, so we didn't really get to confirm this was happening until yesterday. And Chris's texts were like, I'm so excited, I'm pumped, I can't wait. And then this morning when I pick up the phone, we're speaking, Chris's tone is not like that at all, and I'm thinking, has this movie defeated him? Like, it's
partly, yeah. No, I did send all that before watching.
Yeah.
And then woke up with a bit of sore throat. But like, So the story. So
give us the background.
Yeah, because there is. But the true pain of it, I'd almost wish I'd done my original plan, because I don't think you'll fully appreciate the true pain of this. So, me and I will make this very brief. A mate of mine back in, I think, just what year did this come out? 2009. So we'd have still been at uni in 2009, wouldn't we? So it's probably like a couple of years later because it was fairly close to you. Like, I don't know, like 2012, 13-ish, maybe. And a friend of mine is starting this new relationship, and he wants to spend Valentine's Day with her, but they want to set her housemate up with someone. So he chooses me, and we travel, and I'm trying to, because there are other people involved in this story, so I'm being deliberately vague with details, but we travel a good 2.5 hours away. My dad drove us there. His dad was picking us up. So it's a long journey for a 3-day blind date, which is a bad idea. Let me tell you that, over Valentine's Day.
No, that's not a bad idea. That is maybe the worst idea since this movie's inception. Since someone said, let's commission... Since someone said, let's make All About Steve, the worst decision made since that day was that.
Yeah, and it was an awful idea. The 3-day blind date over Valentine's Day, I wouldn't recommend it. And we go, and we have a nice enough time, and I'm the Friday night's fine. But the Saturday, I wake up and it's like 7:30 a.m. in the morning. And I'm like, right, no one else is. I'm on the sofa downstairs. So I wake up and I'm like, okay, I'll tidy up. So I tidy up the whole house downstairs, like, where we'd cooked the night before, because obviously we arrived quite late. So I tidy up, and then I sit down, and I've got nothing to do at this point, and their telly's difficult to work, so I go to my phone, and I have a brand new phone, and I'd tested whether I could get video content on my phone by downloading episode 1 of Episodes, the sitcom with Matt LeBlanc, which I'd already watched, but it was just me testing the phone's capabilities. But I'm like, all right then. So I watched the first episode of Episodes again. I mill about. At about 9:30, I hear movement. The 3 people, the couple, and then the girl I'm sort of being set up with, who obviously I didn't really click with, is up and about. So I'm like, okay, cool. Well, there's one bathroom. Those 3 are up and about. In a minute, someone's going to come downstairs and keep me company. An hour and a half later, someone comes down and goes, oh, you've cleaned, thank you. And I go, oh, yeah. And they're like, right, yeah. And then they disappear back upstairs. It takes till 1:30. I've been up since 7:30 for someone to come down and join me, right? So I'm not in the best of moods. because it just seemed rude. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it just seemed rude that, like, there's this guy, and I'd been really, like, polite, you know what I mean? Like, I'd been a nice guy, like, just come and keep the poor boy company. I shit you not, mate, I watched episode 1 of Episodes 4 times that morning, because I had nothing else to do, right? And I couldn't get any Wi-Fi. I couldn't get any Wi-Fi signal. So they come down about 1:30, and we go out, and it's just awkward and weird, because it's a 3-day blind date, and I don't begrudge anyone for that. It's a weird scenario for everyone. I'm not annoyed at anyone that the whole vibe was a bit awkward and weird, because, like, the couple, my friend, never, like, I think he saw that girl for a couple more weeks as well. Sorry, that girl sounds really different. They saw her for a couple more weeks.
You're trying to avoid the names. You're trying to avoid the names. It's fine.
Yeah, I'm just trying to avoid names. And again, I can't stress enough. Weird scenario for everyone. I was not annoyed at it being a bit awkward and being a bit weird, because fair enough. But equally, we were just chatting and being friends. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was just like, someone could have kept me company, man. Like, and basically got to a point where the person I was being set up with just flat out stopped talking to anyone. Like, so it's really weird. And we come back, and we'd brought with us Crazy Stupid Love, which I don't think you've seen, have you? It's the Steve Carell, Ryan Reynolds movie.
No, I haven't seen that one. But
Ryan Gosling.
Does that not have a reasonably good reputation?
It's a brilliant movie, and I kind of wish we'd watched this first.
Because isn't it written by the This Is Us guy?
Yeah, so it's a really great movie. We will watch it at some point. It's a brilliant movie.
Okay.
We had that with us, and I'm like, should we watch a film? Because that's an activity that doesn't require anyone to talk, so we're just all, we're sitting and watching this film. We're just trying to do anything to, like, make the day a bit more bearable for everyone involved. So I'm like, should we watch a film? And they're like, yeah, let's watch that film you brought. And we brought Crazy Stupid Love. And we couldn't get the DVD to work. Something about that. I think they were trying to use a PlayStation, and it just categorically wouldn't work. And we tried for like 20 minutes, and it just wouldn't work. And then one of them said, oh, we've got another movie, this All About Steve movie. And we're like, all right, let's put that on. So the scenario in which I watched this movie was in the middle of a 3-day blind date that had gone disastrously wrong because my mate and the girl he was seeing weren't overly compatible. Me and the girl that I was being set up with weren't compatible. And as I've gotten older, I've gotten a little bit less. I blame her a lot less than I did at the time, because I was like, you could just be polite. But I look back now and go, that's a fucking horrendous situation for anyone to be in. I don't begrudge any of the individuals for this. I begrudge my stupidity for thinking it could work and going along with a 3-day blind date. It is outrageous.
I remember this. I remember you telling me about this at the time. I remember you telling me before you went, and then after. And I think I'm confident I said at all stages this is a bad idea.
Yeah, and like I say, I'm old enough now to not begrudge. I still think it's a bit rude to leave me down there for like 6 hours on my own, but I don't. It's a horrendously weird situation. If she just wanted to run from it, that's fine. Maybe almost like she should have made an excuse and just gone upstairs, maybe, and just literally taken herself completely out of the scenario, rather than everyone trying to make conversation with each other. But very lovely girls. It is in no way.
You've covered yourself. You don't need to keep defending it. But yeah,
no, I know. But I just feel like, because in the past I've told this. I will hold my hands up. In the past, I've told this story and like played a tiny violin, and I just want to make it very clear: I'm not playing a tiny violin for myself. It was just stupid to even agree to do it.
Yeah.
Fun fact: the next day, I just got up and said, "See you later," and left and got the train home. But. So, you know what it's like when you're on a bad date. Imagine you're in the middle of a weekend-long bad date, and you know that Crazy Stupid Love is meant to be a great film, and you're watching All About Steve. And I just sat there, and everyone else enjoyed the movie.
They did
I'm
not.
There going, well, narratively, yeah, whether my mate was just agreeing for the sake of agreeing, I don't know. But they were like, oh, no, it's quite funny. And I'm like, okay. I'm just like, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to be that guy. I'm just going to go, yeah, it's quite amusing, isn't it? Like lying through my teeth. Because it was just one of the worst movie experiences of my life. But also, like, what are the highlights of the day? Because there wasn't this awkward, no one talking to each other vibe. And at least we were watching something. Like, at least it wasn't episode 1 of episodes for the 5th time. So that is why I do have nostalgia for this movie. Like, it is a movie that I associate heavily with my past, because I associate it with just this really awkward, bad blind date.
Just dreadful. Yeah, I don't. So I had to watch this, and I don't mean because I had to go to work or I had to watch this in bits, because I literally couldn't stand to stare at this for more than 20 minutes at a time.
And is that so? We should give a summary of what it's about.
Yeah. So All About Steve is about
Steve,
a mentally ill person who. But
it's not played like that. It's played for comedy.
It's played for comedy, which is worse. That's not the. It's you did that, and to be fair, it's that makes it worse.
No. It's one of the movie's biggest crimes.
Who has about 2 seconds of screen time with Bradley Cooper and then follows him across the country. They never interact. Maybe they interact 2 more times for about 10 seconds, and she continues to pursue him across the country until she gets trapped in a cave, and then they all realize that it's okay for her to not be normal. That's the movie.
They realize she doesn't need him who she's, in one of the few funny lines, she says, if you have to stalk a guy, he's probably not right for you. And instead, it's about the friends she made along the way.
Mm-hmm. So this is a contrived piece of shit.
It's really bad. Like it's
nothing about this film works. Nothing.
Mean-spirited.
Yep.
It's not very funny.
It's not.
It doesn't
funny.
make a lot of sense.
Nope. The character motivations at any one time exist in order to make an already nonsensical plot less sensical. What I think is most insane about this movie is the entire premise, the entire plot is predicated on her getting the wrong end of the stick about this guy's feelings for her and following him across the country, right? That's the premise of the movie, essentially, yeah? For that plot to work, she can't talk to him. Because the minute they sit down and have a conversation that lasts more than 30 seconds, it'll become clear that he's not interested in her. And she'd just go home. Because that's how a normal human would act. Because the movie, and I don't mean normal in the sense of the movie portrays the word normal, by the way. I just mean any human. Like, the movie goes to a lot of efforts to keep bringing up the word normal in this horrendous, like, way where she's like, she calls it bonds and normal. Like, I'm just so kooky and weird and no one gets me. And it's like, well, you've followed a guy you met for 10 seconds across the country. He's right to be concerned that you're a strange stalker person. That's normal. But again, this is all that would come out in a conversation with any of these characters. But they keep her apart from him for the entire movie. Because they know that. So the premise is flawed before you even start putting pen to paper in terms of executing the idea. It's already broken because you can't put the two leads together. They share 3 scenes, Chris. 3.
I know.
And they're all
also like
deeply short scenes. They're all extraordinarily short.
But it's the same. It's the same also with the turn at the end when Bradley Cooper's character recognizes the good in her and
for
gives
no reason.
an emotional speech, and you're just like, but where's this coming from?
Nowhere.
Like you literally have no reason.
The last time you spoke to this woman, you literally told her to leave you alone and slammed a door in her face, and that was an hour ago.
And he's not. Yeah, and it's not like they've been communicating. It's not like they've been communicating.
No,
she's stuck down a mine. Which also happens there's so many flaws, which also happens in a really weird point where you're like, is this movie meant to be about the mine or is it meant to be about a road trip? Because they do it at literally just the worst moment where it's like structurally you're like, they either needed to have got to the mine later or earlier because suddenly the first half of the movie is a road trip and the second half of the movie is someone trapped somewhere. And also, in a movie that has... Because people often say this, and often I don't really agree because I kind of think you can usually tell people are trying and find some merit. But in a movie that has Academy Award winners and nominees, Sandra Bullock, Bradley Cooper, and Thomas Hayden Church, Ken Jeong and DJ Callis, whose name I'm probably pronouncing wrong,
and fucking the best Keith
actors.
David.
Pardon, sorry?
And Keith motherfucking David.
Yeah, those guys are the best actors. Well, Keith David is I wouldn't be surprised that Keith David is so good. But like Ken Jeong is probably the best performance in the movie. And it's got Sandra Bullock, Bradley Cooper, and Thomas Hayden Church in it. And
DJ Khaled is not in this movie, by the way. Just to clarify, DJ Qualls. The actor who I know mostly from Supernatural, but has done a bunch of stuff. DJ Khaled, famous sort of, I guess producer, rapper, whatever. I don't really know DJ Khaled's work, but is not in this movie. I wish to make that clear.
Oh yeah, but he's on Wikipedia. That guy's on Wikipedia as DJ Qualls. But yeah, Donald Qualls.
But it's not. Yeah, but it's not DJ Khaled, who is a different famous person.
It's not DJ Khaled. No, I appreciate my pronunciation made it. I never thought it was DJ Khaled. I'm just pronouncing.
But I'm clearing this up for the listeners who don't know what's in your head.
yeah, that's fair. They shouldn't be the best performances in the movie.
I actually think Thomas Hayden Church is the best performance in the movie. He's the only one who seems to understand what movie he's in.
That's fair, yeah. That's a fair point.
But yeah, it's fucking everything about this is bad.
It's also not it's also, and which is I think why potentially we end the deliberate bad pick at the first part, because I can't think of another. It's on the exact line where it's also not so bad it's funny. Because if you get a movie worse than this, you're dealing in the territory of you can get enjoyment from bemusement by how bad it is.
Yeah, so at some point I'm tempted to choose The Room, which is famously the worst movie ever made, in quote marks. But people pack cinemas, across the world.
Yeah, because it's so bad it's good.
To yell the stupid quotes at it and throw spoons at the screen and all that stuff. No one's doing it for All About Steve. Because it is...
No, the fact that it's got no trib is insane.
It's unpleasantly bad. It's unpleasant to watch. And, I mean, my notes go on and on. And my notes are constantly interrupted with notes that say things like, it's like whoever wrote this forgot how jokes work or what they generally look like. I've got... Wait. This movie is so far beneath everyone in it, I'm surprised they didn't shoot it on location in hell. That's in my notes, Chris. God love Bradley Cooper for trying to sell the shit out of this completely implausible character. He'd be running a mile rather than smiling through his teeth at this. No human alive wouldn't have just told her to fuck off. Is Thomas Hayden Church the only one who knows what movie he's in? Was this movie written by an alien whose only other knowledge of humanity was other bad movies? This is my notes, Chris. My notes were just an excuse for me to vent so much. The slapstick in this movie is so out of place. Use your words, movie. Actually, don't do that either. You're bad at that too. That's in my notes.
It's just and that's So let's talk about some of like the bigger problems.
Yeah.
It's very mean-spirited.
It is.
Like to the character, to Sandra Bullock's character, to everyone really. The whole thing. They don't. I think they want you to feel sorry for her, but
yeah, because they want you to feel all uplifted in the end when she realizes it's okay to be herself or whatever. But that doesn't work because the movie legitimately at one point had me worried it was going to go down the route of her. She goes around stabbing people. There's a bit when she's decided that she's going to go and find him after she's lost her job, and she's in a bath and it's just her face sticking out the water and it like zooms in. You change one music cue there, put a slightly sinister under it. That's a fucking horror movie. It's the start of a horror movie. But but at the end of the movie, they want us to feel all uplifted about it. But like the whole movie just treats it like it's like it keeps being really mean-spirited and then like trying to make it okay with really flimsy methods. So the best examples is the bus stuff, the bus and the truck. So she's on the bus, she won't shut up. Everyone on the bus is so annoyed. So the bus driver lady pulls over, tells everyone that they're getting off for a break. They let Sandra Bullock get off, but as soon as she's off, they shut the door behind her and go. Mean-spirited, very cruel. Even if she's being annoying, you've just essentially abandoned a woman in a desert. Mean-spirited.
And not taking the time to give her luggage. That's what really annoyed me about that moment. I was like, what's going on with her luggage?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Where's her stuff? Gone. Fucking ridiculous. So then, that's pretty mean-spirited. Then, she finds this truck driver, and he hates her, and he's like, give me some quiet time. And then it's like the writer went, this all feels a bit mean-spirited. They're just being very cruel to this woman. So let's balance this a bit. So it jumps forward in time, and he's just like, and tells Steve, and good luck finding Steve. Like the implication being they've got on. But what's incredible about that is they create a character so genuinely frustrating and annoying that they couldn't believably demonstrate that on screen. So they had to do a jump cut to he just gets on with her now, because there's no actual way to write that character in a way that will believably turn him around without it betraying that character.
No, and you're not going to hear me say this a lot in this review or / rant, but in the movie's defense, getting her with Bradley Cooper at the end would have been a worse ending than what we got.
Sure.
Like, that's the only bit where I went, I see what you're trying to do here. It doesn't work, but I can see what you're trying to do, and at its core, that is a logical ending. Like, the idea of it, at the very least.
And
whereas when he starts doing that speech, you're like, if they get these two together...
Yeah, after 3 minutes of screen time total, yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're right, and I think that's the nugget that makes me wonder, was this a good script at some point, or at least a decent script? You know, was there a version of this movie that sold these ideas? Because actually, on paper, the premise of a person who feels a bit misunderstood, journeys across the country because they've misunderstood a relationship with someone, and the journey leads them to realizing it's okay for them to be themselves, and that they don't need that person because you don't need someone who doesn't want you. On paper, that's fine. Maybe even good, handled correctly. So I don't know, but I do wonder if this was butchered in translation. If the script that got the high score on the Blacklist and got put on the best unproduced scripts of, I don't know, 2005, 2006, whenever that happened, I wonder if this was a better movie at that point, and the studio forced the writer to make a bunch of insane changes, and, you know, too many cooks in the kitchen led to this absolutely untenable movie that just collapses under the weight of its own premise, because it can't put the characters together.
Because there are pieces of, like, for example, and for anyone that's not seen the movie, what I'm about to say is insane, but I swear it happens. So Steve's a cameraman for a news channel, so they keep following, like, disasters and news stories, basically. And a group of hearing impaired deaf students end up falling down a mine, and then they get them out, and then Sandra Bullock...
I'm sorry, but in one of the most insane scenes of the movie. We need to come back to the mine scene in general, but we'll come... Yeah, go on, carry on.
So Sandra Bullock runs towards Steve, all happy to see him. He looks terrified. This is the last time he sees her before he changes his mind on her, but anyway. And she then also falls down the mine. Right. Whilst in the mine, she discovers in one of the cruelest bits of the movie that isn't explored, explained, justified, whatever, played in moments of comedy, that one of the deaf children has been left and abandoned by her classmates, and is just kind of is stuck down there with her. And it's just madness because... And again, this is what I mean by, I'm kind of with you that maybe there was a good script at some point, because the notion that she's trapped with this scared child
that she can't properly communicate with because she's all verbal, and this kid obviously can't hear a word she's saying.
Yeah, so you've got her having to deal with how she communicates because she's suddenly faced with how she communicates. You've got her dealing with the fact that this child has been abandoned by her friends, and actually that you could link that to her going, you know, maybe she sent something down from the two friends she's met, and she's like, shit, this girl's been abandoned by her friends. My friends haven't abandoned me, even though I abandoned them, and they're still there for me. Maybe I shouldn't be chasing this Steve guy. Maybe actually I should be celebrating my friends. Like, you can make... There is the puzzle piece there to turn that into something good narratively. And it's not done, and it's just interesting whether it's like... Was it done?
Is that a remnant of a better script?
Yeah. Yeah. Completely.
Yeah.
Was that a remnant of a better script? Because that piece as a puzzle piece is a good idea, and you don't have to change too much. Like, it suddenly makes... Well, it's suddenly building to a climax, basically, which is linking everything together, how she communicates, the friendship stuff, all of that stuff. But they don't do anything with it, so you're just left feeling
because in the end, it's just like
for this little girl.
Yeah, what's the point? Like, that little girl achieves nothing in the movie in the end. Like, they don't do anything with it. She might, if you write that little girl out of this version of the film, you wouldn't know the difference.
They even have a scene where one of the deaf boys is communicating with someone, and you're like, is he trying to tell them there's someone else down there? Because the person he's talking to seems to be able to understand him. Is the boy lying? Does the boy have a vendetta against the girl? And he's like, nah, there's no one left.
And here's
it's
the thing
so
as well.
weird.
I kind of made a bunch of nitpicky notes. I was just like, these are the least of our worries with this movie, so I'm not going to talk about them too much. But one of them is, how did no one... So to give some more clarification to the timeline of events, the children fall down the mine. They're being rescued while she's arriving. They've just gotten the final one out, but the crane is broken, but it's fine because there's no one left in the mine, as far as they are aware. And then she falls down the mine and discovers that a child has been left. So all the other kids at this point, to clarify, have been rescued. And my question was, how did no one notice? They were with adults, presumably teachers from the school they attend, maybe, that were taking them on a day trip, or their parents or someone. Did no one notice that not all of the children were back up?
Well, that
doesn't make what?
There's a lie. So it says they go. They're all out. Then the crane starts shrieking, and then there's literally a deaf child communicating with an adult who looks like he definitely understands them, who just nods. And it's like, I don't know why that scene is there, if not to imply... Right, here we go. So literally, he's signing. The adult is signing to the little boy, who is signing to him, and we don't know, there's no subtitles, we don't know what the little boy says, and then the man nods. So either that child doesn't realise there's someone else down there, or that child is going... Hazel's down there, and they're just going, yeah, right, well, let's leave her, or whatever. And I don't know the character's name. But, it's so mean and so unjustified, and such a thread where you're like, no, the movie should have done something to explain why, how, because you're just left feeling really sorry for this little girl, who, once they come out the top, is forgotten about.
Mm-hmm. What's this
and
movie?
Like you say, ultimately adds nothing to the movie.
One of the things I wrote before I'd read into the movie was this movie written by a person who doesn't speak English and has only seen and partially understood other bad movies?
I've just remembered as well, if you watched it in stages and were really frustrated, have you not even seen that there's an end credit sequence?
There's a fucking end credit sequence? What, a post-credit sequence?
There's a post-credit sequence. There's a part of this movie you've not seen.
I couldn't wait to turn this off. I felt like I'd reached the end of the marathon. I needed someone to hand me a Gatorade and give me a medal.
You got to check, man. You got to check. Do you want me to tell you now what the post-credit sequence is?
Yeah, go on.
The rival photographer, the rival news anchor?
Yeah.
He stood, frustrated, looking at the hole.
Oh,
and then he jumps in.
Yeah, of course he does.
Yeah.
The most predictable, boring answer to that
question. Because despite this happening twice before, no one has thought to block the hole.
Yeah, just leave him. Leave him down there. Doesn't matter. Nothing matters. This movie is terrible. The thing is, it's hard to review a movie this bad because there's just so many things wrong with it. It's like, do you know what I mean? It's like, how do you review something when the answer is all of it? All of it doesn't work. It's not funny. Let's talk about the comedy. Let's talk about the attempts at comedy. The scene that most breaks my brain, because I think it's an attempt at comedy, is the children falling down the mine. And it just shows this movie's entire lack of understanding of how jokes function. The setup is... They show this, and they spend way too long on this, by the way, it's worth knowing. It's this really long sequence of shots of this really great-looking fairground, and it pulls back, and there's these beautiful flowing fields with a few trees, just pure green grass, the sun is shining, and these children start to skip through the trees towards the fairground, and they're getting ahead of the adults that are supervising them, and the adults are like, oh, these kids are just so excited to go to the fun fair. And the kids are halfway across the field and then and they've down a mine. Although, it's worth noting, that isn't extremely clear at first, and part of me went, did they just blow up these children? And it's worth adding, at this stage, if you're thinking, well, is that supposed to... that surely that can't be a joke. They didn't mean that as a joke. I'm now going to tell you how they lead into that scene, dear listener. Which is by having Thomas Hayden Church's character say, we really need a tragedy. in like a comedic like wah wah, and then they cut into this.
Yeah.
So
it's definitely played for comedy.
The movie thinks it's a joke. I started playing a game with myself as I watched the movie, going intentional or unintentional, which is, was that meant to be a joke, or is that just a really odd moment that the movie didn't know what it was doing with? And it started when she came down the stairs to first meet him, and then without saying a word. By the way, this is his first red flag to get out of there. If I go on a date with someone and they come down the stairs to meet me and they don't say hello, they don't do anything, they just stop, gawk for a second, and then hold up a finger to say 1 minute, and then go upstairs, disappear for 5 more minutes, and then come back down looking almost exactly the same, only now the shirt is way more open, so there's a lot more cleavage, and the hair is more ruffled.
Her bras, you can see her stomach. Her bra is literally out. Like, she literally just unbuttons her shirt to the point where the bra and some of her stomach is showing.
And I went, intentional or unintentional? Is that the movie trying to be funny? Or is that the movie trying to tell me something about this character? Or, God forbid, is that the movie trying to do both? Because I don't trust these writers to achieve both of those things.
It's trying to be funny, I think. It's a joke. Yeah.
Is it?
But also, like,
I laughed
she
once.
then continues to not talk to him until she's jumped on him and is trying to kiss him, and like she makes some joke about how they're really compatible, and that's the first words she's actually said to him.
Yeah, first of maybe 3 that she says all movie.
It's insanity.
It's and to clarify as well, I think I think normally in a movie like this you could at least go, well, at least the characters are consistent. But they're not. Her character, in fact, all the characters, forget, the only character, actually, there's one character that this isn't true of, but I'll come back to that in a second. Well, every character, with that one exception, does what the plot needs them to in that moment.
Mm.
If the script needs her to be normal for like 10 seconds to make the plot work, then she will be. But if to make the plot work, she needs to act inexcusably insane, then it'll do that. And it doesn't matter. And if they need Bradley Cooper to feel bad for her, then he will. If they need him to be scared of her to the point where he's throwing food out the window because he's worried she's poisoned it, then he'll do that, and act manic and do that. If he needs to be charming and putting up with it, he'll do that too. Basically, scene to scene, he's just a completely different character. For no reason. And changing the character's entire mood and tone every time you show him, that's not character arc, that's bad writing. So he goes from completely. A bit bemused but putting up with it to the scene where I wrote the line of, God love him, Bradley Cooper trying to sell this, when when she first appears again in his life, and that's when it gets really bad. Obviously a bad blind date or whatever, and the irony, by the way, that you saw this on essentially a blind date as well was not lost on me, worth noting. He goes on this bad blind date with her, and you just go, oh, he's a nice guy, he put up with her, but now he's getting out because clearly she isn't stable, because the movie presents her as not stable. The next scene we see him in, she goes to, he's like, oh, hi, what are you here for? And they try to make it like it was his fault that she's traveled across the country, which the movie did a bad job of making seem like a thing that could be true. Then the next scene we see him in, he's scared of her. The scene after that, he's gone to paranoia. But with no connecting tissue, with no explanation. Then he goes to just being fed up of it. Then he goes to bemused when he sees her again, finally, and then she falls in the hole. And then he goes to being very fond of her again. And talking about all her good traits, despite the fact they've met like 3 times. Mm. And his character is one of several in this movie that just acts different scene to scene. The exception to the rule is Thomas Hayden Church's character, who is my favourite part of the movie by a mile. He's the one who seems to be aware that the movie he's in is mad and is therefore just chewing the scenery on purpose, and it's glorious. I love it. He seems to be having fun, and I think that's great. His character is the same in all scenes. His motivation makes sense.
That's fair.
He never changes. He's fucking with his buddy at all opportunities. but also like kind of intrigued at keeping her around because twice she's helped them. That's a plot that I don't understand why is there either. They have this weird plot where she keeps proving useful to the camera crew, but I don't know why. Because I was wondering if they were building to her getting hired to work at the news station, so she'd be friends with Steve. They wouldn't get together, but they could work together going forward and travel together and be a little group. And she'd be, because they do these things where they have a scene where she's the only one who notices the dad escaping from the hospital. You remember that bit?
No. Well, give me a bit more detail.
So it's when so the premise. I've got to explain this nonsense as well. There's one of the news stories they go to is a kid with a third leg, and there's protesters saying they shouldn't chop out. And the dad of this kid is trying to escape away from the press, and she's the one who clocks that nurse that's leaving the hospital isn't a nurse, but is the dad in nurse disguise. So they do 2 or 3 scenes like this where she provides information. She also provides some fact about a tree frog that has a third appendage that Thomas Hayden Church's character uses in one of his things, and he's like, I should keep her around. And it's flimsy as fuck, but it doesn't go anywhere.
The explanation being that she, because of her job, which is to create the questions for crosswords, she has like a broad... Like, the character's meant to be incredibly intelligent. She's meant to know a lot about a lot because she's learnt it putting together crosswords questions.
To be fair, they actually do that quite well, because she does seem to be able to spout numerous insane facts, but she has also zero common sense. And I have found personally, in my own personal experience, that very, very well-read people that have a lot of information stored in their brains tend to have a little less common sense. That could be just my experience. I don't know if that's an actual trend, but I've generally speaking noticed that in my life, and that is very true of her character.
A piece of thought on the set as well. Like the set of her room is covered in books. It almost looks like a library. Like, that element of her character is at the very least defined. But like you say, it flits how it's used depending on how they need it to be used for the plot. There's this moment where when they're going up, where she like tenderly like looks at the girl and like puts her hand on her head and like maybe she like kisses her forehead or something like that. But it's just like, this is the first human moment I've seen from you the whole movie. Because in that moment the plot needs her to be human and do that. Yeah. And so Thomas Hayden Church's character is like consistent. Even to the point where there's a moment in the end where he the explanation of how he gets there is insane. There's a point in the movie where basically Ken Jeong's character, who is always presented as being right, I found this a really strange approach, actually. The movie, Ken Jeong seems to be the cut through the bullshit character of the movie, right? So there's a bit where they're all in the van, and he gets a big truth drop, where suddenly he calls everyone out on their bullshit. And the movie definitely presents him as being correct, and like the only one who sees how things really are. That's how the movie kind of plays it. But the problem is, one of the things he ends up saying is, Mary isn't a psycho, she's just a smart girl with red boots. That's the line. I wrote it down. Don't know why. The movie doesn't deserve my attention this much. But there you go. It's the downside of doing a podcast like this on a movie like this. And I understand what the movie wants us to believe here, and that they want us to believe that's true about her as well. The problem is, her actions and choices are so insane, it's really hard not to feel like she does actually need help. She's so unfunctional because the movie doesn't know how to write a person who's kooky, and instead just accidentally makes her insane, but through bad writing. So that doesn't really play. Then there's another moment towards the end where he makes Thomas Hayden Church's character feel responsible for her falling in the pit, in the mine, which isn't true. Him telling her to come along with them and giving her information constantly about where they're going next, he couldn't have possibly known that would lead to her running into an open mine shaft, which is very visible because she's so bloody, blinded by her, her desire to chase Steve. So why are we still presenting Ken Jeong's character as being the one that sees it how it is? Because that's incorrect by all metrics. Thomas Hayden Church's character is not a good person. He's led her along on this journey, and that is cruel. But that's not what he calls him out for.
he calls him out for getting her trapped in a mine, which is the wrong thing. So then, out of a guilt, his character does act consistent with the rest of his characters on the same church and jump in after her, but he kind of does it because he knows it'll also make him the hero, which she allows him to take that credit, which I think is a really nice moment of the movie. It's one of the few bits I actually think I liked, was the bit where they're about to come back up. Completely... She's just like, you can take the credit, make it look like you're saving us.
Yeah, a nice moment for her, but a moment that completely undoes the arc the movie's been attempting to give Thomas Hayden Church's character for the last half an hour. Like, makes that completely redundant.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is actually often that encapsulates a general problem with the writing of this movie. Often, if there's two characters on the screen, it's like they've gone, what do we want for this story or this character in this moment? We want that. All right. In that case, the other character needs to react like this. And it's like no one is going, yeah, but that contradicts their character arc. Nothing in this movie there's no sense of structure and things having to work together. It's like when you're asked to put together a piece of drama in like primary school drama lessons, and the idea is like, okay, they want to fight, so they just start fighting, and no one goes, why are they fighting? And what happens after they fight? Like we did, I remember in primary school, we had to write a short story, and the guy I was with was obsessed with the idea of The Simpsons having a movie. So we called our story The Simpsons Movie. And that was it. That was the entire... There was no actual plot. Like, there was nothing.
Yeah.
And it feels like that. In that moment, they want Sandra Bullock's character to say that, so she says it. And no one goes, doesn't that slightly undo what we've been trying to do with his character? In the moment where Bradley Cooper does his big speech, they want Bradley Cooper to do that big speech and to show that he's come around slightly on Sandra Bullock's character. I can't remember names. And no one goes, but hold on, why?
Yeah.
When she's literally down a mine and unable to communicate with anyone, why is he suddenly changing his mind about this character?
Yeah. Because there's no sense of cohesion. You're exactly right. I think you've just hit the nail on the head, because it's like... here's the scene. This scene, the thing that we're trying to say is that she's kooky, right? So in this scene, she's going to be kooky. How do the other characters react? Well, we're not worrying about them in this scene, because this scene is about that. Okay, yeah, but you can... By showing their reactions to how kooky she is, you can learn something about more than one character. Doesn't matter. Bin everything, that's what we're doing. And every scene is like that. This scene, we need to make Thomas Hayden Church's character do this. We do? What about the other characters? They have to act out of character now to make that work. Is that allowed? It doesn't really matter. Well, this is what we're focusing on. It's like every scene has one purpose and one purpose only, and they'll achieve that at the cost of everything around it, which means that scene to scene, there's just absolutely no consistent through lines of anything. It's all just all over the place. It's just... And it's also, there's a lot of telling you things rather than showing you them. And I think that also hurts it as well. Like, so the movie opens and, you know, we see her going into work and what have you, and she's doing a crossword for the local paper. Although, if she's so good at it, why isn't she working for a larger paper? Different issue. One of my nitpicks. Doesn't matter. But the movie doesn't try to justify that they don't want her, why they don't want more of her crosswords. It's just... a lazy hand wave and a vague response of, we don't do that kind of content, blah, 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 fun, something like that. And then, at this point in the movie, we've only seen her go to work and be rejected for getting more crosswords in her local paper. And then he says, do you even have a social life? And I go, that's why that scene exists. So, instead of showing us a night out, or, you know, even easier... have her leave that office with everyone else, but they're all going off to a bar together and they don't include her.
Yeah.
Simple.
Completely.
Look, is that a great scene? No. But does it communicate that she's isolated herself because she's become so obsessive about being so good at her job. Yes. And does that make the character work better, I think, overall? Yeah, because you're showing it, not saying it. This is a movie of people going, now I feel like this. Well, now I feel like this. Now I feel like this. This is what I think now. Instead of ever actually showing us through their actions and behaviours and choices what it is they think. And while we're on the subject of the newspaper, I just want to say, another one of my nitpicks that I wrote down, insane that they fired her for that paper. I think you should fire the guy that printed it. I'm sorry, it's the editor's fault. Read the fucking crossword before you print it in a fucking paper, you prick.
Well, I don't think we've even explained, because I'm assuming no one's seen this movie. She does a crossword where the answers are all entirely about the Steve guy, Bradley Cooper's character.
Yeah, I have so many nitpicks about that premise, but we'll come. Yeah,
yeah, containing questions that she can't know the answers to. Like,
right.
I think, like,
yeah, that's the problem.
That
so there's two issues with it. So they fire her for submitting a crossword that is where all of the questions and answers are about Steve. First of all, she met Steve for about 8 seconds. Most of that time she spent silently just gawking at him because he's Bradley Cooper and obviously he's very handsome. Thanks for reminding me, movie, that Bradley Cooper is handsome. I couldn't have worked that out without you having her mum walk into the room and go, he's hot. I would have been just so confused otherwise. Why is she so interested in getting in this guy's pants? I don't understand. It's Bradley Cooper. He's a handsome man. I understand. I can see him with my eyes. Anyway. But anyway, she jumps him immediately. They never speak. And then she makes this crossword. And I'm thinking, how does she know anything about Steve to make a whole crossword where all the answers are about Steve? I don't understand. Anyway, that's problem number one, is that doesn't physically make any sense. Problem number two is the movie never actually, it gives one of the clues and never goes into any of the others. And I was fascinated about how, and the reason they don't go into any more is because the movie knows that it can't, because it breaks the premise because it doesn't actually work.
I swear there's a moment where I'm just trying to find it now, where I think they
read one clue.
Up on the page.
It's something to do with what does his lips taste like or something like that. There's one.
No. Here we go. Yeah, so they show us the screen. So it's
oh, you can see it? Oh, you can freeze frame it and read them? Oh, okay.
Well, a little bit. Steve's eye color, Steve's car, Steve's type of... It's not clear on this screen, but it was clearer.
Right.
This is Steve's first job. How does she know what Steve's first job was?
Right. This is my problem. So she does that and submits it. And yeah, right. If you hire a person to write crosswords and what they submit is unprintable garbage, that person should be reprimanded and or fired. Absolutely. Depending on how bad and whether they have another crossword to submit. Which, by the way, she has a lot. They set that up at the beginning of the movie. If they get that and go, this one doesn't really work because I've read it and checked it before I printed it in a fucking newspaper, then you just call her up and go, hey, you submitted this insane Steve crossword. I'm sure it's a very charming idea, maybe to you, crazy person, but could you please send one of those 9 crosswords you showed me this morning that aren't about Steve so we can print that? But what instead they do is just print it, and then when the whole town, who, by the way, are inexplicably obsessed with crosswords, like, it's just loads of shots of people on buses going, can you solve today's crossword? It's really obtuse. I don't get it. People on the toilet talking to each other through the stalls. I don't understand this crossword.
And they literally set up at the beginning that he doesn't want to put the crossword in more because they're a small local newspaper
and no one likes
and
the
it doesn't
crossword.
matter. And then they have a scene where the entire town is reading it, mate.
Yeah.
So I've managed to zoom in a bit, right?
Go on.
Steve's grandfather, Steve's second language, Steve's favourite book, Steve's first car, Steve's first girlfriend, Steve's birthday.
Can I
just things that she doesn't know?
The problem is here, there is a way you make this work and make that make sense, but it makes her look worse. So you're between a rock and a hard place.
Steve isn't one of these.
Right, so I'll tell you...
Steve's birthday's on it twice.
I'll put it this way, Chris. The solution also doesn't function for another reason, which means the premise in itself, once again, the actual idea at its core is broke, because you can't do it without it somehow being wrong, if that makes sense. But the other answer, Chris, is that you cut to her after the, couple of minute long date where he runs off, having had her jump him. You cut to her writing it and show her Googling him on his social media. Because what's this? 2009 social media was a thing. Like, doing all the deep research on her laptop or something and putting the crossword together. The problem with that is it's broken because then it makes her seem like a crazy stalker person, which makes Steve, who the movie presents as wrong for thinking that, although I think the movie often presents evidence that he's very rational to think that, which is the other issue. The movie's going, he's bad and wrong for judging her, but then it's like, but also she followed him across the country. Like, okay. But so it adds to that problem if you do it that way, because then you've actually got her stalking him online too, before then stalking him across the country.
Wait,
so it solves the problem of the problem of the crossword, but it doesn't actually solve the problem of the script issues in terms of like this whole idea that the movie wants us to think the movie wants it to be wrong that Steve is judging, but the movie also keeps demonstrating why he's absolutely right to be worried.
Do you want to know how lazy this movie is? And this movie, for context, came out in
2009.
Hold on. 2009, so DVDs and stuff were a thing at this point, yeah? It gets to clue 54 and then goes back. The clues underneath 54 are 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 52, including the numbers repeated.
Right.
So I guess the insinuation there is she's so obsessed. Well, I suspect they didn't ever think anyone would pause on that frame and look close enough at it.
Yeah, they just wrote a couple and then copied it because it would only be on screen for a couple of seconds and it had to look reasonably accurate. Yeah, laziness.
But the in-universe explanation, because I'm sorry, like
I can't believe you're about to fansplain all about Steve, but carry on.
Because I just think that's the height of laziness. It's literally we're talking about 8 clues. Just come up with 8 more clues, for goodness sake. Because you go, well, maybe she was so obsessed that she just kind of repeated stuff because that's all she knew or whatever, which goes completely against her character who's obsessed with crosswords and doing them and loves her job. Like, it's madness, man. It's such madness.
Yeah, it's a really bad, like again, it's the movie is so overt sometimes that you know what it's trying to do, and that actually hurts it because when it's this overt about things, like the example I just gave, where it clearly wants us to think Steve is wrong, you can't then present a bunch of evidence to the contrary of that in your movie. Because I don't think Steve acts irrationally at all. He is almost too polite when she first shows up in Chicago. He should be way more alarmed than he is at that moment, but he's being very polite about it. But, like, yeah, she's followed him across the country. I would also be scared that this person was not well. I think that's that's a consideration you have to have. Like, but the movie, like, makes him seem like a monster. But it's just because it has absolutely no interest in, backing up its claims. It'll just tell you stuff and then hope you believe it without evidence. Or even worse, in the wake of evidence to the contrary. Yeah, mate, I have so many. Yeah, and the whole crossword thing, which we've pulled apart there, is one of 1,000 things in this movie you can pull apart that thoroughly. Where you go, this part of it doesn't work, this part of it doesn't make sense. Why did he print it? Please tell me he's also getting fired for putting that in a paper, because he would be. Who blindly prints a thing they've been handed in without checking it? And that's the thing is, if the answer to all the questions was Steve, that would be different, right?
Yeah.
Comedian blank Martin. Because then you could go, they glanced at the questions, it looked okay, no one took the time to work out the answers. All right, it's still weird. They wouldn't check it, but fine. The fact that they literally it's at a glance, it's an insane crossword.
But unless to fansplain, I think the explanation is she's so good at what she does and has been doing it for so long that they just assume.
If she's so good at it, then why not put her crosswords in every day, Chris? Like she wants.
Yeah. I don't disagree.
And also, this movie is full of shitty slapstick. badly performed, badly executed, doesn't add anything to anything. It's just there for literally no reason at all. There's like a weird fight in the middle that's like impossibly bad, and I'm not sure what the joke is. They just sort of struggle for a bit, and it's like, all I could think of was the cameraman filming it, waiting for the director to say cut, and going, why are we still filming? They're just sort of fumbling about. This isn't entertaining. What's happening here? Like, even the actors going, is he still just? Are we just still pretending to struggle? Like, the scene's over, right? like
I did.
Yeah.
I'm flicking through it now. I did laugh. There is a point where I laughed.
I had one laugh too.
Which is when, it might even be the same one, which is when Thomas Hayden Church's character is reporting about a dead horse, and then in the background the horse gets up.
Oh yeah, no, I didn't. That's not the same scene. No,
what was the bit you laughed at?
So I kind of understand that scene. I think was like, I went, oh, okay, that's a reasonably well executed comedic premise. I didn't personally laugh, but I actually can't pick at that. That's a fine joke. Like I so for those who, because the explanation is really clever. So for those who have and don't watch the movie, we're not recommending this movie, so I'm going to spoil it. Basically, they're an old west like place, and there's a guy that's holding his colleagues hostage because I don't know, he's a disgruntled employee or whatever. And there's a bang, and then Thomas Hayden Church's character turns around as a news reporter, sees a horse lying on the ground, and turns to the camera and starts eulogizing the mighty steed. And then it gets up behind him and just carries on while he's eulogizing it from being shot. And it turns out that the Wild West place regularly puts on shows where they shoot like cap guns, and the horse is trained to lie down when it hears bangs. And the bang wasn't a gunfire, wasn't a gun being fired, but was a truck backfiring. That is a perfectly sound comedic premise. I didn't personally laugh at it, but I totally understand why that might make someone laugh. That one kind of works. The one that got me, and it's just one very quick line. It's not a big scene like that one. It's just when Thomas Hayden Church's character, again, the best part of the movie, clearly, ends up in the mine shaft. The first thing he says, which has just tickled me inexplicably, which I wonder at this point, am I just delirious of the movie, by the way? That's my wonder. But, maybe this isn't funny, but he just turns and says, did you check the perimeter for spiders? Which tickled me so much.
There is another example.
What does that even mean?
Yeah, that's just nuts. But to keep looping back to the news channel that are doing really bizarre animated graphics of her falling down the hole, and every time they get new information, they add when they discover there's a girl down there, they redo the graphic with the girl added.
Right.
That is a decent comedic premise. It's another example, like you were talking about with the horse. It didn't particularly make me laugh. Again, it felt a bit mean-spirited, but I can at least recognise the comedic premise they were going for that, and the merit within it.
But I think the movie often throws away logical character stuff in favor of a joke as well. So there's a line early in the movie. There's a scene. Oh god, this movie is full of so many insane scenes that really need you have to actually explain the concepts of them because they're so weird. There's a scene where she goes to a school for a career day to explain what her career is, and the most judgmental children that have ever existed seem to go to this school. Maybe it's a school for judgmental children. I'm not sure. They're all like, what, you don't even have a husband or a boyfriend and you live at home? Like, kids care about that stuff. Like, there's no way those kids give a shit whether she's got a boyfriend or a husband. But anyway, the movie doesn't work if they don't judge her. So they judge her. And one of the things they judge her on is not living at home with her parents. And they ask her what her housing situation is, and she explains that her house is being... So it's not that she's so... Because they ask her, how do you afford to live on one crossword a week? That can't pay rent. And she's like, well, I live at home. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Okay, there's a thing about the character that gives us context. She loves her crossword so much and doesn't want to do anything else. So she's currently living at home while she tries to break into a more regular paying crossword job. Because that's what she wants to do with her life, and she's going to make that sacrifice for herself. I've learned something about the character. But then she adds, my place is being fumigated, so that's why I'm staying with my parents. And I went, what? That negates anything I've just learned about her. So she does have her own place that she's clearly paying for and can afford, and now it's being fumigated. That's a different explanation, movie. Which one is it? And then
I think they're trying to insinuate, because there's a few references to, like, fumigation takes ages.
Well, so I'm just going to I'm getting to my point is,
sorry.
Later in the movie, they reference it as a joke a couple of times, the fumigation thing, like the line Chris just quoted. And bad jokes, by the way, that aren't funny, but, that's a given. If I say this movie has a joke, assume it's not funny unless I say otherwise. So they had a good character thing, but they obviously had this fumigation joke later in the movie. So they left that setup in, even though it hurts the character development, because they wanted the bad joke. Take the joke out. It's not a good joke anyway, but even if it was a great joke, even if that payoff was fucking hilarious, it hurts the character. And character and story are more important than your stupid joke. You can come up with more jokes. Why?
Completely.
There are multiple references to this fucking fumigation thing throughout the movie, and I'm scratching my head even now as to why. And that, again, endemic of the entire movie, right? It's like a repeat. It's just like, it's this. Every problem we've discussed in this review, place it throughout the entire film in 1,000 different scenarios. We're giving examples, but there are hundreds of examples of each of these problems.
But again, it's the more we think about it and talk about it, the more frustrating it is, because again, there's a kernel of a good idea there.
Yeah.
The notion that the fumigation was done ages ago, but she's using it as an excuse because she doesn't have the confidence to go out into the real world and live on her own.
Right. Sure.
So in order to remain with her parents in that safety net, they're exaggerating the fumigation. Like,
wow. I didn't even think of that as an option, but you're right. That's like, you've just taken the fumigation thing, which I thought hurt the character, and you've made it actually tell us something else about the character, maybe even a little bit more interesting. And you've done that just casually in a podcast. Like, a professional writer wrote this. Well, I suppose a professional writer didn't write this, actually, because generally the Blacklist is like unsolicited script, so this is a first-time writer. But, like, our dumbasses spitballing, you just made that work.
Yeah.
But the movie never establishes that.
Yeah. So, what other notes have you got before Triv? Because this is...
the movie's ending is super lazy. Don't ever change for anybody is a lazy attempt to make any of this have meaning. None of it has meaning. It's all meaningless. It's all insane. It's just a series of weird scenes that go nowhere and do nothing and add up to nothing. It's not the sum of its parts. It's the number one over and over again for an hour and a half. There's no meaning to this movie. The boots. Briefly, want to talk about the boots. The movie gives her these red boots and repeatedly has all the characters reference the boots, these red boots. Oh, this lady with red boots, It's hundreds of times in the movie. And I'm thinking, is there a payoff for this? Is there an explanation? Because the movie focused on them at the beginning. I was like, oh, they're fashionable boots. She's wearing fashionable boots, I guess. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not a fashion person. Maybe they're fashionable. I don't know. But then they kept referencing them, like it was like a character trait, which, again, in a movie this devoid of good character work, I guess red boots is as good as any as a character trait. So I'm just like scratching my head going, I don't really understand the thinking around this old red boots thing, but fine, whatever. Movie's movie. I don't care. And then the end of the movie, she says she has a big moment of being a real like human with the deaf girl, and she's like, you want to know what? She's the Joker. You want to know how I got these boots? She's explaining the boots like it's like Han Solo getting his fucking jacket in the Solo movie. Like we've mythologized the boots, and now we want to know where it came from, and maybe she'll give 4 different stories. I'm sorry, I'm butchering a very, very good performance from Heath Ledger for a cheap joke. I'm very sorry. I should have done it with Jared Leto's Joker. It's much easier to mock because it's a shit performance. Don't at me. Jared Leto is a bad actor. He fucking is. Shut up. Anyway, sorry. Really hate Jared Leto.
Made that clear.
He's a bad actor and a bad person. Go away, Jared Leto. It's not appropriate to send a used condom to a castmate. It's just not. Sorry. It's just not. Don't care.
That's very true.
Yeah,
that is
you're a dickhead.
Undeniable.
You do that, you're a dickhead. Congratulations. Yeah. Here's your dickhead award. It's shaped like a penis. No, sorry.
On a side note, Dan,
Go on.
Don't. You're about to get a package delivered from me today. Don't open it. You won't like it.
I genuinely was confused a second there. Oh man, now I want to open it. All right, but yeah, yeah. No, anyway, moving on. So, she goes to the boots have been mythologized the whole movie, and I'm thinking, oh, there must be some payoff here then, because they have wasted like it feels like 30 minutes of my time today focusing on talking about the fucking boots or referencing them in passing. And she says, "Do you want to know why I wear these boots? I wear them because they make my toes feel like 10 friends on a camping trip." That is the movie summed up in a sentence, because it's repeatedly demonstrated, it's repeatedly shown as if it has meaning, and in the end, it's a shit joke. That's all this movie is.
The writer also did License to Wed, the Robin Williams movie, which, if memory serves, isn't that bad. But they did the screenplay and the story for that movie, which
yeah.
So,
I'll scan if I've got any other notes. But I mean, do you have any sort of final thoughts on this while I quickly scan, see if there's anything else I need to talk about before we do a couple of pieces of trivia and get out of here?
No, but because you didn't have trivia, I have some quotes, Dan, because there's not much trivia. So
yeah, I've got a couple of pieces, but yeah, nothing.
I will give you some quotes from Rotten Tomatoes reviews. So,
yes, please.
even talented and preternaturally, I don't know what that means, but attractive people can't entirely engross us without the help of a good script. Mm-hmm. This isn't a perfect film. May's persona was annoying. I think the filmmakers just let go of the story at a certain point, but the film's heart was in the right place.
Wow.
Destined to disappoint even the most diehard of Bullock fans. On paper, a crazy rom-com starring Sandra Bullock and Bradley Cooper could only be a good thing. Wrong. Jesus. Which is good. However, there are some positive audience reviews. Some liked it. I'll read them. It's so quirky. Sandra plays Mary well. It's cutesy and funny, and the cast is great. I recommend it, unless you're into gross comedy, then you would not like it. Love the movie, love the character that Miss Bullock brought to life. I rewatch the movie frequently. I'd struggle to imagine anyone rewatching this. So yeah.
I just found two other things I wrote in my notes that were more sort of quotey reviews than than actual like notes about the movie. I wrote they haven't made her insufferable. They've made the movie insufferable. I feel like every character she encounters desperate to make it stop. I also wrote, she run the trucker over, off screen, obviously. Oscar fucking Wilde couldn't have made that believable. So anyway, I'm done. I'm done going through. I don't even want to go through my notes anymore. Let's do the 4 bits of trivia, and then they're really nothing. This is how bad this is how barren this movie is for trivia. The first piece of trivia, Chris, is 3 words long.
Right.
Shot in 2007.
That's not trivia.
Yeah, well, that's what's on the IMDb page, Chris. We're reading it. Next one. In the movie poster, the umbrella is red and white, but in the movie, it's blue and white. Some trivia.
Cool.
Now, this is the bit that I actually like. This is sorry. There's one more bit before we get to this one. When Mary is soaking in the tub, the song in the background is sung by Helge Bullock, Sandra's mother.
Oh, that's good. That's
actual trivia. I know. Yeah. And then the final thing, which is the thing I most enjoy about this movie. And for years, I didn't realise this movie was the thing that caused the thing that I already liked. Because when you said last year all about Steve, I went, I don't think I've heard of this movie. And I had to Google it. I was like, oh, Sandra Bullock's in it or whatever. I didn't realise this movie spawned what was one of my favourite viral clips from back in the day.
Yeah, I think I know what you're going to say. Yeah, and this is amazing.
So I'll read the trivia which talks about this. And then I rewatched the moment this morning and had a good time. So if you want to watch something good that came from this movie, let's very briefly dive into this. Sandra Bullock was in 3 movies that released in 2009. The Proposal, she got a Golden Globe nominee for that, for Best Actress. The Blind Side, where she was nominated and won an Academy Award for Best Actress. And All About Steve, where she was nominated for and won the Razzie for Worst Actress, and also won the Razzie for Worst Couple with Bradley Cooper. Now, as a result,
a side note, the film was also nominated for Worst Director, Worst Actress, Worst Screenplay as well,
right,
and Worst Picture, obviously.
Yeah. And as a result, the Razzies happened the night after the Academy Awards. She became the first performer to win an Academy Award and a Razzie Award in the same year. And she became the second person to ever accept her Razzie Award in person.
The Wikipedia has it as the other way round. The Academy Award came after, so it was Razzie, then the next day Academy. But anyway, that's by the by.
Interesting. Yeah.
But anyway,
okay. But yeah, either way, she was the second ever person to accept a Razzie. Halle Berry had done it in 2005, and what Halle Berry had done was a very different approach to this, by the way. Halle Berry showed up and acted like she just won an Oscar. She came on with her Oscar, actually, and said, "They can't take this off me." Which I thought was very good. Sandra Bullock, on the other hand, took a different approach to turning up to the Razzies. She showed up on stage in the Razzies, and you can watch this clip online. And I won't talk about it too much because I don't want to give away a lot of her gags and stuff. But basically, she stepped on stage at the Razzies with a big box and said, "People say no one saw All About Steve, but there's 700 people who vote for the Razzie Awards, and it takes a majority for someone to win it, which means at least 350 people have seen All About Steve." She says, "And if that's not true, and you've all not seen the movie, then maybe I shouldn't be up here." So the box she has is full of DVD copies of All About Steve, and she says, "Everyone's getting a copy. Go home, watch the movie, and if you still think my performance is the worst one of the year, I'll come back next year to return this award." And then she goes away. I don't believe they did rescind her Razzie, tragically. It's incredible.
It is funny because looking at the other nominees, Beyonce in Obsessed, Miley Cyrus in Hannah Montana the movie, Megan Fox in Jennifer's Body and Transformers Revenge of the Fallen, and Sarah Jessica Parker in Did You Hear About the Morgans. Part of me does go, I don't remember Megan Fox being that great in Transformers Revenge of the Fallen. Part of me looks at that list and goes, maybe out of those, she wasn't the worst actress.
Yeah, it's tough that, isn't it? Because that's the problem with those Razzie Awards, like worst performance, because like often it goes to just bad movies. There were worst performances in that year, but like people always focus on the performances in bad movies. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So like it has to be a movie that was like not liked before they'll even consider the acting in it to be bad. Like I'm sure there are plenty of reasonably solid movies or just average movies with horrendous performances. But it never ends up being those people.
As I've made clear, I don't think she's good in this movie.
No,
I don't.
Not.
But she's not. She's not good because of the script. Like,
right,
I don't know
she's
how...
doing the best with the words she's been given. It's that old trope, isn't it? Like she is.
I don't know how to blame she is
the unsellable. And she fails because it's unsellable. Like she doesn't fail because she's not talented enough. She fails because the script is written in a way that makes a character so inconsistent that there's just no way to make it function. Right? Like that's the problem. Like I think a more consistent character, she probably could have nailed it. She's a talented actress. I've seen her in many things that I've gone, she's very good in this. And there's another Sandra Bullock movie that's definitely coming up on this podcast at some point where I think she's fucking brilliant in.
Mm. Fair play to her as well for going to the awards.
Right, yeah. Well, she totally makes a joke about that as well because she sort of indicates that like she'd hinted she might turn up if they vote her in. She's like, "Oh, and look at that, I won." Like she sort of makes a joke that like maybe she wouldn't have won if she hadn't hinted she might show up. She says, "Man, if I'd have known all I had to do was say I was going to turn up to the ceremony if I won, I would have won Oscar much sooner or whatever." Yeah, that's very good. But she asked them to watch the film, but if they change their mind, she'll come back and return the award. And then she bought drinks for everyone, apparently. So, fair play to her for acknowledging the situation. That clip's great. If you want to, don't watch this movie, but if you want to go on YouTube and type in, Razzie, Sandra Bullock or whatever, you'll find the clip. It's only like 5 minutes long, but it's good fun. She's clearly understands that the movie didn't work in the end, and seems to be in very good spirits about it. I'm a fan. I like Sandra Bullock a lot. I think I like Sandra Bullock. I like Bradley Cooper. I like Thomas Hayden. I like all these casts. This is a good cast.
I completely agree. Yeah,
Keith David's great.
At its core,
I love all.
At its core, the structure and the tone is the problem, and even a lot of the tone comes back to the structure. Like the little girl, where it feels so cruel and cold-hearted because nothing's done with it. If they'd done the thing we talked about, making that be the catalyst for her realizing her friends are what mattered, then it would be fine. And
we talked about that. She makes friends on this road trip that follow her around and are there to sort of
and
smile
also
and be nice, sort of, but they don't get enough screen time to really be established, so it's kind of strange.
Friends who are clearly in love with each other, and we don't get that. We don't see them kiss, or we don't get the affirmation that they become a couple, which I really wanted.
Yeah, just anything. Give me something. This is the problem, isn't it? It's like, again, it's I wear them because my toes feel like 10 friends in on a camping trip. It's meaningless. It's just a series of meaningless colors, lights, and sounds. Very much like the new Space Jam movie.
Yeah. So, just to confirm, not recommending.
Definitely not.
Sweet. Where are we to do better things? Where are we going next week?
So next week we're going to a classic, and one of sort of my. I don't know if you're aware, Chris, but timing wise, next week is Spooky Week, Halloween. Not for us. We're recording this in fucking August, but for the listeners who are listening to this in sort of 8-9 weeks time or whatever week this comes out, we're about to be Halloween. Now, Halloween doesn't land on a Tuesday. Halloween lands on like the Sunday or something. So what I'm going to do is release it a couple days early, so it lands on Halloween. And it'll give us a chance to review a movie that I'm very fond of. I don't know if you've seen. You might have. There was a period in uni when a bunch of people got very annoyed at Chris because they realised how many classic films he hadn't seen, and they made him watch a bunch of them, including like Ghostbusters and Jurassic Park. Do you remember that? Like, do you remember that period? When it became a make Chris watch a movie, at least one movie a week that he hasn't seen that he should have seen.
Yeah, I watched Ghostbusters after uni, but The Lion King, Jurassic Park, that certainly applies.
So this might have been part of that, maybe. But if not, and you haven't seen it, we could be in for a good time. Because I'd be curious to get a modern view on this movie. But we will be taking a look at Tim Burton's Beetlejuice.
No, I haven't seen it.
Excellent. So this is a movie I saw by accident as a child, and fell in love with, and I've not seen it in a while, and I am excited to see if it still holds up. It is Tim Burton at his most Tim Burtonist, but in a good way. Before he got too much money, before his movies had too much budget for their own good. Alice in Wonderland. Oh yeah, the cough doesn't work unless you do it over the title, does it?
Because it's often also obviously cited as an amazing Michael Keaton performance. So
it's incredible.
I'm excited by that choice.
It genuinely is one of in a career as storied as Michael Keaton's and as talented as he obviously is, the fact that this still somehow is one of his best performances is remarkable. It is something. He sells something that's so far from what he normally gets to and has to do. It's such a shift for him. He's almost unrecognizable in this movie as Michael Keaton, and that's what's amazing about it. I can't wait. I'm really excited about that. This is one's been floating towards the top of my list for quite some time, but then I saw the opportunity for us to do it for Halloween, and I went, oh yeah.
Great show.
Yeah, so I'm excited. We're gonna watch Beetlejuice. I have no idea which streaming platform it's on, if any. I will say, if anyone is genuinely curious about All About Steve, and I'm telling you now, please don't. But it's on Disney Plus in the UK and many territories outside of America, which tells me it's probably on Hulu in the States, but I don't know that. I'm just guessing because, as a rule, the Hulu stuff, anything that's on Hulu tends to be on Disney Plus in the UK through the Star service. But I'm not sure. But yeah, please don't put yourself through it. It's not worth it, I promise.
I couldn't believe it was on a streaming platform. I really couldn't. I was like, someone's taken the time. But I suppose, to be fair, not a lot of people know about this film. So if you were just looking for something to watch and fancied a rom-com and saw Sandra Bullock and Bradley Cooper on the poster,
sure,
like,
or even
probably
Ken
watch
Jeong
it.
or Thomas Hayden Church. I could see anybody looking at this cast and going, "Yeah, that looks like it could be good fun."
It's insane. Don't do that. But I'm excited for Beetlejuice, and I'm excited that we're back. I'm looking forward to some rewinding some reviews.
You know what? I do love this podcast. This one wasn't my favorite, not the podcast itself, but just like having to do this. But I will say that, you know, I think Chris is right, and that going forward we retire this idea. If we have any bad movies now, it'll happen by accident, and we will come across other terrible movies.
Yeah, and there will be movies that like to be fair, like The Girl Next Door was a movie I remembered from my youth loving. I didn't realise how bad it was until we rewatched it.
This idea of like purposefully choosing the worst film we can think of needs to stop, because I can't do this again.
We've both done one now.
We can't top this, and two, I can't sit through it again. So yeah.
And also it doesn't lead to. I think what we've discovered is, at least for Joe's Apartment, because it had bits that were just so absurd, you could get excited about. There's nothing to get excited about this movie. So I'm so sorry. Hopefully this is no one's first exposure to this podcast. This isn't a reflection of what we usually do here. But I mean, it doesn't help that we're both feeling a bit knackered and I'm feeling a bit rough.
And it doesn't help that it's like a deeply cynical movie.
Yeah, because there's no
joy in this
Although
film.
again, as we've said, there are pieces, and at the end it is at least trying to say something. It just doesn't execute it well. But yeah, it's So this isn't a reflection of what we usually do. And I think that, you know, I don't, because there will be bad movies that we discover are bad, like The Girl Next Door. But we've each done one now. We've each specifically chosen a bad movie because it was bad. We're done with that premise.
Yeah, because for a couple of reasons, but I think actually the most prominent one, I don't think you top this.
No, because I think anything else is either not as bad or tips into
so bad it's good,
but entertaining because it's bad.
Right. Yeah, exactly. This is actually at the very, very... This is as far along that scale as you can get without starting to come back the other way.
Yeah, completely.
There is no movie worse than this in that sense. It's just so unpleasant to watch. Ugh. I can't... Yeah, the amount of baffling decisions made, I still am scratching my head. So yeah, because
even take something like, and actually I don't think this movie is worse than this movie, but take something like Suicide Squad.
The first one.
If we were watching Suicide Squad, we would be laughing about, this is Katana, this is da-da-da. We would be laughing about the almost, animation style opening credit intros that they give characters and think that's enough to define the character.
Yeah, but for everyone except for Slipknot, and then you go, well, everyone gets these big elaborate, like, what's funny about that is everyone gets these big elaborate, like, Harley Quinn, this is her backstory, Deadshot, this is his backstory, and it's like, oh, and here's Slipknot, and you're just like, oh, I guess Slipknot's dying really quickly in this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's really bad. But even then, in that brief moment, we laughed and got excited by how bad it is.
Yeah.
You can't do that with this because it's just so offensive.
Awful. So next year, for the first episode of the series, we're not going to challenge ourselves to top this because you just can't. So we'll go back to just picking a movie we're kind of interested in checking out. There's a ton of movies on the list still, though. There's so many I want to get to. There are some of my all-time favorite movies we've still not done.
Same.
And there's a bunch of stuff as well that I'm just like super curious about. I'll get. These aren't necessarily movies I'm going to pick anytime soon, but I'll just off the top of my head, like I definitely want. I'm thinking about at some point going back to check out Small Soldiers. Do you remember that movie?
I remember trying to watch it and couldn't. I think I went to the effort of renting it. Right. And just watched about 2 minutes, 10 minutes, and went, nah, I'm not sure this is for me, and stopped.
The original Karate Kid has got to be done at some point. We've still not done fucking Jurassic Park. We've still not done Gremlins 2. At some point, I want to check out Starship Troopers. Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Donnie Darko? Hook? The fucking Matt LeBlanc Lost in Space? I'd love for you to sit down and watch the original Mighty Ducks movie at some point.
Yeah.
Die Hard. We haven't done Die Hard yet,
which is crazy.
Right.
The Santa Claus.
Mars Attacks. Nutty Professor.
No, we didn't do the Santa Claus, did we?
No, we didn't do it. We did Jingle All the Way.
That was it,
Ace Ventura, dude. Ace Ventura.
Yeah,
Demolition
the Mask,
Man,
Dumb
Speed,
and Dumber,
Wayne's World, Addams Family, Godzilla, the 1907 one. The Wedding Singer's on my list because I loved that movie as a kid, but I haven't seen it in a long time. Hope it isn't a problem. So many great movies and bad movies as well, I'm sure, in that list. But there's a ton of stuff I really want to shoot. I would love to. I don't think you've ever seen Blues Brothers.
No, I have. I've seen both Blues Brothers.
Oh, great! Yeah, the second one is rough. Okay, cool. But either way, I want to talk about it on here at some point.
Yeah, definitely.
So stick with us because there's so many movies that I'm really excited to talk about. Yeah, I do feel bad. All About Steve has kind of turned out to have been a poor choice on both of our parts because I laid the gauntlet of do worse, and Chris succeeded, but it was a bad choice of gauntlet. Like, I shouldn't have set that as the precedent because we ended up in this situation where we watched a movie we both just felt unhappy about sitting through.
I did succeed, though, so point to me.
Oh, yeah, you won. I said last year I felt bad because you made me watch The Girl Next Door, which is a bad movie, and then I went nuclear with Joe's Apartment. You went Death Star.
But I think even if, and I don't want to retroactively get cocky because this might not be the case, but I'm pretty sure even if you listen to it, I am never fazed because I'm literally like, no, trust me, I can top it.
Yeah, you did. You success. You succeeded. You succeeded in that for sure. So yeah. Anyway, thanks everyone for listening. It's been a good old time. Come back next week when we're going to chat about Beetlejuice, a better movie. I think even if you don't like it, Chris, you'll probably still think it was better than this.
Yeah.
But I'm very excited to do that, especially knowing you've not seen it. So yeah, come back to hear Chris discover that in a week's time. Obviously, in the meantime, in fact, well, you don't even have to wait necessarily a week if you don't want, because episodes go up a week early on the Patreon. So if you're on our Patreon for as little as $1 a month, you can hear Beetlejuice right now. Unless you're listening to this a week early, in which case you'll have to wait a week if you're already on the Patreon, if that makes sense. That makes sense. Otherwise, you can head over to the YouTube channel and subscribe if you want to help us out by sort of showing some support over there, liking a couple of videos or whatever. That'd be fun. That'd be helpful. You can obviously go review this podcast on your podcast platform of choice. You can also ask questions if you want. We haven't done that on Rewind Reviews since the end of the last season, maybe? Or did we do it on that? Did we only ever do it on Avatar? I can't remember. But feel free to ask a question over on the Patreon and we'll answer it at the end of one of our podcasts. We haven't done it this week. We haven't got a listener question, but I'm thinking about letting a few build up before we do them again anyway. So we'll probably do a few episodes till we do that again. We'll give you guys a break. But also obviously our other podcast as well, Analyzing Avatar, that also goes up a week early when we're in season for that over on the Patreon. Obviously, main podcast, Nothing But Static, where we review different TV shows every week, usually newish ones, not always, but usually, and do TV news. All that good stuff. It's all out there. It's all available. Twitter, I'm at Dan Doolan. Chris is at C. Billingham. If you'd like to send us an email with some thoughts on All About Steve, and I hope no one does, because that would make me go, phew. So few people have seen this movie. If we get tons of emails with people with thoughts on this film who've seen it, I'll feel sad. That will depress me deeply.
Yeah, that would be upsetting.
It would be upsetting. So yeah, feel free to let us know. You know, I do want to hear from you if you have thoughts on the movie. Obviously, I'm not saying don't email in, but it will make me sad. It'll make the baby Jesus cry. That's the ways you can get in touch with us. Obviously, the YouTube comments is always a good place to do that as well if you've got some thoughts. But yeah, that's everything. But thank you guys so much for listening. We're back. I'm very excited. A whole 11 episodes of movie chat ahead. And I'm sure at some point we'll see if we can. We're debating our options right now, but we have a sort of a mild plan for it to do another trilogy this year that might line up with a release, but it only might because COVID. So we'll keep that tentatively as an option. But yeah, otherwise, thank you so much for listening, everyone. Oh, go on, sorry.
COVID and basically, because not necessarily COVID, because it is scheduled, but more the Suicide Squad making people go, huh. Maybe people aren't going out and seeing movies.
Yeah, the Suicide Squad for us, for listeners, we're in August, so that for us, Suicide Squad came out a couple of weeks back and has performed okay, but kind of underperformed in the grand scheme of things. Free Guy seems to be doing better, which is kind of crazy. And I think it's interesting. I think the movie industry is learning the wrong lesson. They're not going, so if you release a movie called Suicide Squad and it's terrible, and you release another movie a few years later called The Suicide Squad, maybe casual audiences will feel once bitten, twice shy. Instead of that, which is, I think, the answer to why it's underperformed, instead of that, they've gone, must be the pandemic. Which, don't get me wrong, by the way, that's definitely shaving a little off the top of any movie release right now, for sure. No question. There are definitely people who don't feel confident to go to the cinemas yet. I get it. On board. Understand. But let's be honest, once bitten, twice shy probably accounts for a lot of Suicide Squads underperforming.
Well, also, dual release, because am I right in saying Free Guy isn't available anywhere else?
Correct. Free Guy is available in cinemas and only in cinemas for now. And the Suicide Squad was released day and date, whatever they call it, on HBO Max. So the same day it came out.
As was Black Widow.
Correct.
With Disney Plus. So yeah, it's that as well, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but either way, it's made a lot of movie studios shit themselves, and there's a lot of talk about Bond being pushed again. They've just pushed Venom a month, which I thought was really weird. Well, you're going to push it. Oh yeah, the pandemic will be better in a month. What a fucking... Yeah, all right, yeah, cool. Good thinking, Sony. Fucking idiots. Anyway, so we have a trilogy planned for this series that would line up with the release of a new movie. So there would be some synergy there, because I see other YouTube channels doing that, and I go, that makes sense. Let's see if we can maybe mimic that. But we record 10 weeks in advance. So we may just do the trilogy and hope for the best that they don't move the movie. But they're probably going to move the movie. The movie doesn't even have a fucking trailer out yet. That's a warning sign that it ain't coming out in fucking December like we thought. But anyway, different story. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you guys in a week's time. I've been Dan Doolan.
I've been Chris Billingham.
Make sure you come back in a week's time to hear us chat about Beetlejuice.